Joining us now to talk about this bizarre weather in California is environmentalist Ian Borsuk with Environment Hamilton. Ian, when we hear that sunny California is getting hit with record snowfall, global warming is perhaps not something that comes to mind, but is this extreme weather a sign of climate change?
Yes, it's actually might seem a little intuitive at first. However, it's really important to note that California has been experiencing record heat waves and record droughts for a very long time, as I'm sure most viewers are aware of at this point. And when you have such strong heat and dry weather for such a long amount of time, that actually adds moisture to the atmosphere. And when you have an incredible amount of moisture up in the atmosphere, which has been the case from it being so dry, that increases the likelihood of extreme weather. And in this case, extreme weather events in the winter in Los Angeles that has increased precipitation. So this is a sign of climate change, and unfortunately, it's not a sign that the real struggles that people in California have been experiencing as a result of climate change, being the droughts, the wildfires, and the like. Unfortunately, this isn't a sign that it's going to be lightning in 2023, but in fact is evidence of what's been happening already.
There's been snow and flooding all within a week across California, having a tremendous impact on those who live there. But what are the major environmental concerns when extreme weather hits?
Well, you can end up disrupting ecosystem processes. So when you think about the types of different changes that happen on a seasonal basis, a lot of that is based off of the weather. So even just thinking locally speaking, when it gets a little bit warmer here in southern Ontario, you might see trees start to bud, you see flowers start to bloom and the like, and then we get hit with another freezing rain or something like that, and that ends up disrupting those plants and ultimately hurting them. And the same thing will be happening in California as well, albeit, the extremes between different weather events and the like between the seasons in California historically hasn't been quite as extreme as here in southern Ontario, but there still are going to be impacts from that. It's also really important to note that flooding is extremely dangerous and bad for both green and man-made infrastructure. So you're going to end up with all the negative impacts of flooding. And when flooding happens, you end up washing away a lot of chemicals, a lot of man-made material into our local nature spaces and the like too. So flooding is bad for the environment on its own.
More extreme weather events are being seen all around the world at all times of year. How concerned should we be about these events, and what, if anything, can we do to prevent them from getting worse?
Ultimately, people talk about individual changes that we can make, and there certainly are changes that we can make on an individual basis, but this is going to require massive governmental reform. We have to move away from burning fossil fuels. We have to build a just transition for people in those industries that are going to be impacted first. And ultimately, we have to change how we operate our global economy. Antonio Guterres, the UN General Secretary, has been sounding this alarm multiple times, saying that, humanity is on a death spiral, that we're marching towards our own extinction. And while that might seem quite extreme, looking at what's happening in California right now, it really is what's happening. We are continuing to make the problem worse. Emissions continue to rise. And where we have had, some really significant gains, they're not adequate yet. And so, the governments of the world are going to have to really step up. And really, if this is something that's concerning someone at home as they're watching this, I really encourage you to get involved with local politics, get involved with local community members, and make it clear to elected officials at all levels of government that they have to do better. We can save lives if we make the actions now, and we don't just accept that we can continue to burn fossil fuels, that we can continue to do things business as usual. We have to make some pretty significant changes, and a lot of those changes are going to happen from above.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly.